standing before an audience, trying to recall the fading script you have just memorized, while your legs shake and your palms sweat. I believe this is going to be quite a familiar scenario for us students who have to do a lot of speeches in our schools. Well, what if I forget a line? What if I make a mistake? Oh, the audience are going to be making so much fun of me. Well, yes, these concerns are quite common and even natural when you're addressing a crowd one-to-one like this, right? But in this case, natural and common does not exactly translate to being logical and being reasonable or being any justifiable. And you might ask why, right? Because it is common and natural in the first place, right? Well, the reason why is because that the reality isn't as harsh as we might think it would be. Let me tell you my story. So, I'm a person who was on TV for quite a lot. I started appearing on TV since I was like around 4, and I've accumulated around 500 hours on air, so quite a lot, right? And it is going to be quite impossible for me to say that I had no unflattering moments on TV since then. Yeah, I made a lot of dumb mistakes and silly errors. Think about it. Making a silly mistakes and having possibly tens of millions of people watch that. Well, quite brutal, isn't it? Well, in this case, not really. So a while back ago, I was on this show called 아침먹방, which is not exactly a TV show, but still something that accumulates a lot of popularity within South Korea. I think my episode had around 1 million views, so yeah, quite a lot. During the filming of that show, in classic 아침먹방 fashion, the host broke into my room at 7 o'clock in the morning, abruptly woke me up, and threw my guitar into my hands for me to play. Let's just say that my performance was nothing short of catastrophic. Well, I was so embarrassed and devastated. I even tried begging the editor to cut my part of the final video. Yeah, from that, few weeks went past and the date of my video's release finally came by. Well, I checked my video out, and what do I know? My guitar part was just still there, basically untouched. I thought, oh boy, I'm so screwed. The comment section are going to be making so much fun of me with that pathetic excuse of guitar performance. Fueled by my morbid curiosity, I found myself wound up at the comment section and scrolling through it. But to my surprise, I found no comments criticizing for my errors or even dunking on me for that guitar performance or taunting me. But I was only able to find stuff that complimented me for my appearances, my character, my attitudes. Well, that's not what I expected, I thought. Now intrigued, I decided to take a look at some of my older appearances on TV. When I appeared on TV while I was much younger and much dumber. After like hours of scrolling and looking through, I was surprised to find no negative comments or criticizing comments about my mistakes, but only ones that complimented me for my appearances and attitudes as well. With that, I kind of realized other people aren't as fixated to the mistakes that we make. And also, we're afraid of making mistakes because we think that the others are going to judge us based on our mistakes, not because they are going to be actually judging us based on our mistakes. Well, then, you might say this. Well, you're saying this, okay, we get this. This is your story, but how are we supposed to relate to this, right? I mean, this is just a story of this one random Asian guy, right? Well, not exactly. You see, people, like humans, are actually built to fear mistake, because fearing mistake will naturally translate to being like trying to avoid making mistakes because, well, we're afraid of it, right? And there's quite a lot of studies that support this claim as well. So first of all, there's this claim by Slanker and Ferry. So according to these two, people are often tend to be quite self-aware, especially when addressing a crowd. So So what this means is that we're going to be overly focused on the situation that we're in, the actions we do, and the feelings we feel, rather than naturally interacting with the crowd or dealing with the task given at our hands. And this is able to make the perceived strengths of mistakes and imperfections we make much greater, hence increasing the fear to the mistakes and anxiety for the mistakes as well. Secondly, there's something called cognitive distortions, which includes also something called all or not thinking, which is something like if I make a mistake, it will lead to humiliation. And also something called catastrophism, which is something like if I make a mistake, it will lead to mistake. So these two elements that I mentioned is just basically the same. And by engaging with this kind of cognitive distortions, we get more anxious and afraid of making mistakes, because such cognitive distortions make the perceived outcome, the perceived negative ramification of making mistake much greater. And there's also something called upward social comparison. This is comparing yourself with a certain ideal standard or example and thinking that the others are going to do the same and compare you with this certain ideal example. So this comparison is able to make you feel more inadequate for the occasion and, well, generally it'll increase your anxiety as well. So yeah, this is going to be one another factor that increases the whole stage fright and social anxiety business as well. Lastly, there's something called confirmation bias. So this is something like this. Oh, I made a mistake that one time and it led to a bad consequence. Since that bad consequence happened that one time, if I make a mistake this time as well, it is going to lead to a bad result as well, because this bad result happened that one time. So this kind of thinking is also able to increase the anxiety for mistakes, because it links the mistake with bad results. And plus, on top of this, according to Festinger, this bias is also able to increase the feeling that the other is going to be harshly critical against one as well, so better avoid it. And yeah, so what's the takeaway from all this? Well, the message from this whole how human brain functions is that you shouldn't be too obsessed with how you think that the other is going to perceive you. Remember, you don't have to be perfect. I know it, you should know it too, and everybody subconsciously know it as well. So don't be afraid of the others judging you because you made a mistake, because the others know that you can make a mistake and you should make a mistake because you're not perfect. Just remember this. Yeah. Don't be afraid of how others think, and just be yourself and show yourself the